Hey there guys, Reaper here, and today's video is what I'm calling the Hitman debacle. Essentially what happened is Hitman, or at least the first episode, quote unquote, of the new Hitman game has just been released, and it's caused quite a bit of controversy for more than one reason. Basically there's three different aspects of this I'm going to be taking a look at. Hopefully in this whole video I'll be able to give a reasonable and honest breakdown of what's going on, and then kind of my final comments and recommendations about either getting the game or perhaps not getting it. So three different things I'm going to look at. First one is the episodic release structure, which I'm going to be kind of explaining how it works and just kind of my thoughts on if it's a good or bad thing and what it's basically going to mean for the game. Second thing I'm going to be looking at is the DRM system, which understandably has caused quite a bit of controversy, and I think I'm on the side of the people whose feathers have been ruffled in this case. A lot of the Hitman fans aren't happy, and I can understand why. I'll explain why in a moment. And the third reason is the supposed performance issues that people are supposedly having. I've been playing the game, I've done a bit of a benchmark, and hopefully I can give a situation of at least what happened to me. I can't comment for everyone's systems. I can let you know what happened to me and if I think it's acceptable. So, first things first is the episodic release structure. So if you look at this, this is the Steam page for the game. Essentially, you've got the full experience for 40 quid. Again, this is going to be in British currency. I don't know what it is for the people in mainland Europe who are using euros or the dollars or whatever currency you're using. I only know what it is in pounds. So I've got the full experience for 40 quid, the intro pack for 11 quid, and the upgrade pack for 33. So essentially what's happened is the full game hasn't actually been released yet. What they've released is the tutorial mission, which you can do a couple of times. There's a kind of shorter than full length, but kind of, you wouldn't call it kind of a tutorial mission, but it's kind of the opening mission, which is slightly shorter than most of the others, just to give you an idea of what playing independently is like. So you get kind of a tutorial mission, a prologue, slightly shorter than average mission, and you get the first full-length mission that's been released, which is called the Showstopper mission, which is a mission based in a Paris fashion show, which is actually quite a fun level. So basically what's happened is those three things have been released in what they've called the intro pack, which is £11, which is the one in the middle. So essentially, if you pay £11, you can get the tutorial, the prologue, and the first form Showstopper mission. If you get the upgrade pack, basically what that means is you get the first lot. If you then decide you want to get the rest of the content as well, you pay another 33 quid. That's going to give you access to everything else once it's all been released. Instead of buying the intro pack, you can buy the full experience off the bat, which is 40 quid. At the moment, at the time of making this video, which is the 20th of March 2016, that will give you immediate access to the missions in the intro pack, and that will give you access to everything else as it gets released. So the upgrade pack is basically, if you buy the intro pack and you decide you want the rest of it, you buy the upgrade pack for 33, you'll get everything else. If you just want to buy the intro pack, you can do that for 11 quid, or you can buy the full experience straight off the bat. So you get immediate access to everything from the intro pack, which is actually released, and then everything else as it gets released down the line, you'll get that if you've bought the full experience. So the upgrade pack and the full experience are essentially pre-orders. So right off the bat, I would say do not get the full experience or the upgrade pack, at the moment, because it's essentially a pre-order. You are paying for content that's not yet been released. The content might be good when it comes out. They might have fixed a few issues, which the game has now. However, we don't know what's going to happen. There have been so many instances where people have been hyped up, pre-ordered games, and it's kind of just an excuse. You're paying for money for something that isn't finished. Once it is finished, your money's already, if it turns out you don't like it, your money's already in. It's a free card for them to basically not finish their content. It's happened time and again. Aliens Colonial Marines was a huge example of this. It was terribly reviewed. It was pretty much by consensus an awful game, but it made a crap ton of money because so many people pre-ordered the game. Basically, the rule of thumb is never pre-order games. That's why companies try and suck you in with pre-order bonuses, which thankfully they don't appear to have done here. You're not obliged to. They haven't said if you buy the full experience you get bonus missions. They haven't done any of that, thankfully, which is what they did with, which I think Square Enix did with the Deus Ex Mankind Divided pre-order, which thankfully they changed around in the end. They haven't locked off any content to the full experience or the upgrade pack, but basically never pre-order anything, so do not buy the upgrade pack or the full experience pack until all the content has actually been released, and you're happy after it's been released, the reviews are good, the content seems good, it seems worth the money. So, a lot of people are unhappy with kind of the episodic release structure. The thing is, I actually think it's quite a good system for a lot of reasons. Basically, if you want to, well, don't buy the full experience or the upgrade pack off the bat, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of people are complaining that they don't want it released in chunks, they just want the full release. If you want to wait, you're not obliged to buy the intro pack. If you feel that, I don't want to buy this in chunks, I want to wait until the full game is released, all the main content, bar any kind of future DLC, the full game is released, you are free to do that. You don't get screwed by you wanting to wait and get the full game. It's actually slightly cheaper than buying the intro pack and then the upgrade packs. If you buy the intro pack, it's 11 quid. If you then get the upgrade pack, it's another 33. So that's 44 quid. If you buy the full experience, it's 40 quid and you get the same amount of content. So if you want to wait, you go, right, you know what? They haven't released everything yet. I'm going to wait until they release everything. If the reviews are good, if they've sorted issues out, if it's going to be worth the money then I will pick it up. You are free to do so. You do not get screwed by doing that. In fact, you actually get a slight advantage from the people who bought the intro pack and then wanted to buy the upgrade pack, presuming they do buy the upgrade pack. You actually save 4 quid there. So you do not get screwed. In fact, you have a slight advantage in waiting until the full game is being released. It's probably a wise decision. But the thing is, you can buy, if you want to, the intro pack. It's being released. You know what you're getting. It's only 11 quid. If you buy the intro pack and you then find out, you know what, I've paid 11 quid for this, you get one full mission, you get the tutorial and the prologue mission. By that point, you will have determined if the game is for you. So if you only pay 11 quid for the intro pack, and then you decide, you know what, this isn't really for me, you've just saved yourself £29. So if you bought the full experience and then have gone, you're kind of a couple of missions in and you go, you know what, this isn't really for me, this is maybe not what I thought it would be, I'm not really finding it that much fun. If you've done that, having bought the intro pack and then decided you didn't really like it, you've just saved yourself £29. So you can use this system to your advantage. So I wouldn't get the full experience because it's basically a pre-order. The upgrade pack is essentially a pre-order. You can get the intro pack to try it out. If it turns out you don't really like the game, you've then just saved yourself a load of money as opposed to having to pay for a 40 quid game and then finding out quite early on that you don't really like it. If you want to wait for the full release, you have that option and it's actually slightly cheaper than upgrading. Or if you get the intro pack for 11 quid, you can play some of the content immediately. You don't have to pay the full price to play what's just been released. And then you can wait. You don't immediately have to get the upgrade pack. In fact, you shouldn't. You should wait until the rest of the content is released. And then you can buy the upgrade pack if you think it's worth getting. So I think you can use this to your advantage in so many ways. This isn't anti-consumer. If anything, I think this is pro-consumer, weirdly. So I think it's actually quite a sensible system. On top of that, what I imagine they'll do is they've released the intro pack. If, say, a couple of missions come out, they might release those, say, for $11.99. The next 2 missions, they might keep releasing it in chunks. If they say the next 2 missions come out in another pack, so that maybe that's 11 quid, you get 2 full missions. As people buy it in sections, it will get reviewed in sections. It will get critiqued in sections. So if the next couple of missions come out in another pack for 11 quid, if it then turns out, hang on, the intro pack maybe was quite good, but then you find out the next pack is maybe the missions aren't quite as good, they're not maybe as long, they're not as well put together, maybe they're a bit buggy, you can think, I'll tell you what, I bought the intro pack, I'm not going to buy the full upgrade pack, I'm going to avoid the second one, and maybe if they improve it, I'll buy it then, or maybe if the next 2 after that come out, you think, I'll buy those 2, but I won't buy the 2 that weren't as well reviewed. So you can go, I'll buy the intro pack, turns out maybe the second pack isn't as good, I'll avoid that one until they've improved things, or if they improve things. But maybe the third one is quite well reviewed, they've kind of improved things, I'll go at that one. Because Hitman's not a hugely story-focused game, it's kind of individual big missions. You can go, these missions are quite cool, do these ones. You don't really lose a lot of plot by skipping a couple of missions, you lose maybe a little bit, but nothing huge. You can go, I'll avoid that, and then I'll buy the next one if they're any good. So you can actually cherry pick the missions you want, the ones you think look interesting to you, and the ones that have got the best reviews. So you can actually use this whole system to your advantage. So I would just say, cap off, don't get the full experience, it's a pre-order. Don't get the upgrade pack, it's a pre-order. Obviously, hopefully you'll have watched the rest of the video before you make your full judgment. You could then, if you want to, get the intro pack, and then you can wait until the rest of the content gets released, and then if you want to get the upgrade pack, you could cherry pick the missions you want to get. Or you could wait until the full game is released and buy the whole thing for 40 quid if you think at that point everything is worth getting. So you can use this to your advantage in so many ways. If they'd locked content out, as I said, say if they say if you buy the full experience now before the release you get a bonus mission or bonus skins or bonus items, whatever, I would have said no, that's a pre-order bonus, you shouldn't be doing that. But you can use this to your advantage in so many ways. So I would say this episodic release structure actually works, I think in practical terms, quite well. So I would say, at least in this case, the first point, episodic release structure, or they don't really call it that, they try and avoid using that term because it's got kind of negative connotations, but I would say I actually quite like the release structure. So that's my point on that. Okay, so the second point I need to talk about is the not quite always online DRM system. Now, if you're thinking back to SimCity, it is a kind of similar case. It's not quite as bad, but there are some details I need to clarify. So basically what I mean by this, when you start the game, it will automatically try to connect to the Hitman servers on the developer's end. If you've got an internet connection, it's no problem. It will connect, presuming their servers are up and your internet connection is solid. You'll connect and you'll be able to play the game as normal. There is an offline mode you can use. However, this is the issue. You can play offline if you don't have an internet connection. If you start the game up, it will try and connect. If it fails, it will then go, we failed to connect. Either you can quit or you can go into offline mode. So you are able to play the missions in offline mode if you don't have an internet connection. However, when you start the game, say you've got an internet connection, you start the game, you connect fine when you start the game up. When you start the mission that you're doing, whatever mission, whatever save you load, you'll go in the game and you'll be fine. You're in online mode. If at any point during your game you lose connection to the servers, either your internet goes out or they have issues on their end, and they have had several issues due to the game just being launched, the servers get clogged up, they have issues, loads of people get disconnected. If you start off in online mode and you get disconnected either through servers or through your own internet, you will immediately get kicked out of that game. A script will kick you out of your game, a message will pop up saying you've lost connection to the servers. You cannot then reload that save until you regain that connection. Again, either if the problem's on your end, if you get your internet back, or if the problem's on their end, their servers get fixed. You cannot continue with your save until that issue gets fixed. You're able to get back into online mode and be able to play that again. It doesn't just go, you're now in offline mode, you've lost connection. It just boots you straight out and goes, no, you've lost connection. You're going to have to wait to reconnect if you want to play that save again. So there is an offline mode. However, it's not for lack of trying. There is no deliberate option in the game where you can press any button or set deliberately to offline mode. The only reason I managed to get in offline mode in my game is because my internet was actually broken at the time. Just by weird coincidence. If you haven't got an internet connection, you'll start the game. If it fails to connect, it will go into offline mode. However, if you have an internet connection, it will automatically go into online mode, and there's no option where you can cancel out of that. So basically, the only way to deliberately get into offline mode is if your internet is genuinely not working, their servers are actually down, or the only other way I can think of, and I did ask, I went on the Reddit thread, for the Hitman game, asked around, no one really seems to know. There might be one. But if there is one, they've gone out of their way to hide it because I couldn't find it in the settings. There's no option to deliberately set to offline mode. So basically, the only way I can think of it is you'd have to deliberately unplug your Ethernet cable or turn your router off or disconnect your internet to be able to play in offline mode. So basically, if you play in online mode, if you lose connection at any point, whatever point you're at, you get kicked out of the game. You cannot access any of your online saves until you regain your connection. This is a frankly ridiculous decision. It's not quite as bad as SimCity's was, where you could never play unless you had an online connection, but not being able to access your saves because you lost connection, considering it might be the problem, as it often was this week, was on their end with their servers, it's pretty ridiculous. So to get to offline saves, you would have to disconnect your internet deliberately before you started the game, which is frankly ludicrous. If you had an option to set to offline mode, it wouldn't be as bad. However, having to disconnect your internet because you don't want to play the game and have the risk of you being booted out is quite ridiculous. So, anyway, bit of a complaint there. Other thing I need to mention is that there is no correlation, or correlation is perhaps not the right word. There's no link between the offline saves and the online saves. The game actually says the game distinguishes separately from online and offline saves. If you played an offline save, you could not then make that an online save. If you played online, if you get disconnected, you cannot load an online save if you're in offline mode and you have no connection to their servers. So basically, you either have to deliberately sabotage your own internet or maintain a constant connection to be able to play properly. Now, you could just say, well, you know what, I could just play in offline mode. Why don't I just do that? Even if I do have to unplug my internet, a bit annoying, but I can play in offline mode. There's no risk of me being disconnected for the servers. That is true, however, you're also limited in what you can do in offline mode. It actually limits, you can't gain experience. The items you unlock as you level up and you start playing new missions, when the new missions get released, you won't have access to any of them. if you're replaying a mission, any of the entry points you unlocked as you're going through the mission, you won't be able to use those in offline mode. And there's other stuff like challenges you can't use in offline mode. Leaderboards you can't use, not such a big deal. I can understand in offline mode you won't have access to leaderboards. However, as you can see here, the bit of footage I had, I'm in offline mode. It actually says specifically here, there's no doubt I can't use any of these features while I'm in offline mode, which is frankly ridiculous. When you complete a mission, you don't even get a rating. There was no reason for that to be on server-side stuff. There's no reason you'd need an internet connection to get your rating at the end of a mission. You don't get any of the items you've unlocked. You don't get any of your experience, any of the skins you've got, any of the entry points, which do affect how the missions actually pan out. If you want to replay a mission starting at a certain entry point or with a certain dead drop you can pick up during the mission, you can't do that in offline mode, which is really annoying. So basically, if you want to have full access to all the points of the game that you've paid for, you have to have a maintained connection. If you lose the connection in online mode, you then get booted out. You cannot reload that save until you regain connection to the server, and then you could lose it again. Loads of people reporting problems getting booted out from the server. If you play in offline mode, to even get into offline mode, you have to sabotage your own internet, or it actually has to be off at the time, which is a joke. And while you're in offline mode, you don't get access to all the challenges, which have really nice replayability. You don't get elusive targets, stuff like that. You don't get items you've unlocked, entry points. So it's a pretty stupid system, and I can understand why people are annoyed. It's actually, they've just shot themselves in the foot with this, really, to be honest. I mean, because mechanically, the game is actually pretty solid. I think a lot of people think the consensus, maybe not consensus, but definitely a majority, I think, of people would say they've really done a good job with the mechanics. The game runs, the sort of mechanics are great. The cover system from Absolution's back. However, they've brought back a proper save system. There's auto saves every so often. You can save whenever you want during a mission. The disguises, they've done a good job kind of balancing between the early Hitman games where disguises were a bit too good and Absolution where they were almost useless. In a lot of cases, they've got a good balance with those. The mechanics are great. The gunplay is really nice. And the mission's really good as well. They've gone back to the kind of grassroots of Hitman where they've got big open, more sandboxy type missions, which was a big complaint about Absolution. They've done a great balance between old school Hitman style, big levels, stuff like that, but they've kind of fixed the problems, or most of the problems at least, that Absolution had. So they've basically just shot themselves in the foot. Another guy pointed this out. This wasn't my discovery. If you look at the Steam reviews, it's currently, as I've made this video, mixed. Most of the negative reviews are about the DRM system. They're not actually about the game mechanics. Most people seem pretty happy overall. Not perfect, but pretty happy with the game mechanics. And then they've gone and shot themselves in the foot with this stupid online DRM system. So, understandably, for several reasons, it's a really stupid system. And I can understand the backlash towards the game for this. And it's a real shame they've done this, but there we are. So on to point 3. Okay, so the third point I need to talk about is the performance of the game, at least on my system. A few different people saying they're having performance issues when they're trying to play the game. However, that is pretty much true of every new release, where there's always a handful of people saying they're having difficulty running the game despite the fact they've maybe got quite a good PC and they should be able to run it. Sometimes it is the fault of the game, where tons of people have the problem. A lot of the time it's not very well optimized, especially when it's a port from, say, a console to PC. A lot of PC games aren't particularly well made or ported very well, so there are performance issues there for a lot of people. Sometimes it is just individual cases, but either way I can maybe take a look at the performance issues, at least for what happened to me. You can see I've had in the top right hand corner of the screen, I've left the fraps counter on whenever I recorded the footage that you're seeing. So I didn't actually record with fraps, I just had fraps open just to get the FPS counter, and I used Nvidia Shadowplay to record it. So you can see while I was recording, bear in mind as well, recording the footage is going to put another kind of strain on the CPU and the graphics card as well. So take into account the fact that while you're seeing this footage with the FPS counter, I am also simultaneously recording. So that's kind of another thing you have to take into account. The FPS might be slightly lower than it would be if I was just playing and not recording at the same time. Even while I was recording, it didn't seem to have too many issues actually. There were a couple of times it did dip, but it was only maybe for a couple of seconds. Even in big crowds, a lot of people are saying when they go into an area with loads of people, big crowds, that is kind of tends to tank their performance. But mine seemed to be fairly consistent, by far from perfect, but it wasn't too bad. There were a couple of times it did dip below kind of 60. It was a little bit noticeable once or twice. However, it seemed to be, sometimes it was because of saves as well. If the game's savings, it dips an FPS a couple of times just because it's saving. That's fair enough. but it was fairly consistently over 60. However, that is bearing in mind I've got quite a strong, by no means top end, but I'd say I've got quite a solid, reasonably expensive rig going on here. You can see my PC specs are in the video description. If you want to know, please have a look. And I was running, it did default to pretty much low settings for everything. There are, to be fair, quite high recommended system settings on the Steam store page. It does give you the recommended and minimum settings. They are quite high, although to be fair, it is quite a new game. But there were a couple of times, considering it was on definitely a lot of the low end settings, it wasn't consistently bad. It was still good enough that when I was playing I was getting over 60, but it could have been a little bit better. It wouldn't put me off buying it. It was good and consistent enough with the rig I've got to get a decent frame rate. However, maybe they'll patch it a couple of times, it will increase. I would expect a little bit better. I'd expect these sort of performance figures maybe on medium. Almost everything was on low. The game does still look quite nice, to be fair. I didn't have any problem walking in crowds. Wasn't perfect. The game also has a benchmarking feature, which is quite nice. If you load up the game, go to settings, you can select settings and hit benchmark. So it'll bring sort of series of situations up. So it'll bring maybe a long shot up. So a situation where maybe you're looking over a big crowd. If you're right in amongst a big crowd, different corridors. So basically the benchmark gives you a situation where it shows you various different situations that could affect the performance if you're playing the game. And it will give you sort of detailed information of frame rate and sort of other stuff like that. When I ran the benchmark, you can see mine now. It did again seem to be fairly consistently above 60, although this, again, the benchmark was done on the low settings. So performance-wise, I didn't have any major issues, only a couple of frame rate drops here and there. However, if I put the performance up a bit, the settings up a bit, excuse me, so the graphics are a bit better, it might do a bit worse. I would expect it to get, considering on the lower settings, I wouldn't really expect to get anything. So it's not too bad. It wouldn't put me off buying the game. It could be a little bit better, but it was consistent enough, I think, to be able to play the game virtually uninterrupted. Even on the lower settings, it could be a bit better, but it wouldn't put me off buying the game. So I think hopefully I've covered all I need to talk about. So I've covered the episodic release system, the DRM system, and the performance, at least for my system. I would say for the performance, this is just what happened to me and with the rig I've got. I can't comment on anyone else. You might want to do a bit more research, just maybe if there's a problem with the graphics card you've got, maybe people might be having problems with that graphics card or the processor you've got or a certain setting you're trying to run. So just the thing I'd recommend on performance front would be check what your settings are, maybe Google your graphics card in relation to the game and just see if anyone's having issues with certain pieces of hardware or if other people are having performance issues with you with kind of similar specs, or just say, these are my specs. If anyone's got something similar, do you think I'll be able to run the game? Because I can't really accurately comment on everyone's situation. All I can say on the performance front is I have quite a good spec PC. I was normally able to get a fairly consistent high frame rate. Did dip a couple of times. Was a little bit disappointed. It was a bit low considering I was on the lowest settings, but it was fairly good for me. But just do your research before you buy the game if you're thinking of buying it. So I've covered DRM, performance issues, and as I started off with, the episodic release. So where does that end us off? If it were not for the DRM system, I would actually recommend, if you like the look of the game, if you're thinking about getting it, I would actually recommend you pick up the intro pack. Unfortunately, the DRM system as it is, having to maintain an online connection to get all the settings and then being booted out and having no option to set to online or to offline play deliberately without cutting your internet, and if you do play offline, you're limited in some of the features you've got. I cannot in good conscience recommend the game. It's not acceptable for a single player game to have that sort of restriction in it. So I would say do not get the full experience pack before everything's been released. Don't get the upgrade pack before everything's been released and reviewed and critiqued. If they remove the DRM system that they've got, they allow you to play fully in offline mode, and they give you a setting where you can choose to hit offline mode. Maybe it automatically connects to online, but you get an option where you can deliberately set to offline mode. You get all the features you really should have in offline mode. I would then recommend, if you're looking at buying the game, get the intro pack. Until then, while they keep the DRM system, don't bother. It's not an acceptable thing. It interferes too much with the game. It's not even simply a principle thing of, I won't buy it out of principle. It's partly that, but it does interfere actively with your game, the online offline system. So I think I would say, if they change that around as they did with SimCity, well, as the other company did with SimCity when that went tits up, if they get rid of the DRM system, pick up the intro pack. Don't pick up anything else. Don't pick up the upgrade or the full experience pack until they've released everything and you're happy with the reviews, you're happy with the results, and they remove the DRM system, then pick it up. If they remove the DRM, get the intro pack if you're thinking about buying it. As I said, mechanically, the mission was really good. The Showstopper Paris mission, which is the first full mission you get, the mechanics are solid. They've made a serious improvement. They fixed virtually all the mistakes of Absolution. They've done a really good balance of going back to kind of old school Hitman, but with a good sort of more modern cover system. It looks great. It plays really nicely. You've got big open sandboxy levels, loads of ways to do your mission, and you're not kind of pressured to do any one route. It is really solid gameplay, but I can't recommend the game while they've got the DRM system. So hopefully that clears everything up. I've made all the points I need to make. So if you've got any other questions, do please leave them below in the comments. Other than that, if you liked the video, you think it was good, please let me know. And please leave a like or subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Check out some of my other videos. Other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.